And tonight, Chris will be adapting a short story from award-winning author Neil Gaiman. The story of a contest between the King of Dreams and his three siblings, Despair, Delirium, and Desire, for the life of Joshua Norton. Welcome, Chris.
Fellow Toastmasters, honored guest, our story begins in a small tenement, a one-room apartment, and a walk up in a shabby building in San Francisco in 1859. A man by the name of Joshua Norton stands staring in the mirror, a razor blade clutched in his hand over his wrist, shaking. Hovering over him is a creature known only as Despair. She stares at the man who so recently entered his realm, his business destroyed in the past, his life in ruins and in tatters, having no hope and no vision of the future, and lacking even the will to end his own life. And she sees in him the possibilities not only for despair in her realm, but for a challenge. And she summons her elder brother, the King of Dreams, Morpheus, Dream, to her side, and she issues her challenge. "What power do your dreams have?" she asks. "What can you do with this mere mortal in your pathetic dreams?" And Dream looks at her and says, "Careful, sister, for without dreams, there can be no despair." "Can you keep him from all of our realms, my sister's delirium and desire, before death comes to claim him?" And Dream accepts the challenge and looks into the mind of Joshua Norton and sees in there a man beset by the confusion of the land, his dreams broken, his money lost, his life in tatters. But he sees also another thing, a spark, a small dream within him. And he gives Joshua his dream. "What did you do?" Despair asks. "I have given him what many men have fought and died for," answered Dream. That may or may never have happened, but it offers a possible explanation for what did happen. In September of 1859, Joshua Norton went to many of the newspapers in San Francisco and delivered letters to them. And in those letters was a proclamation noting the troubles in the United States, the problems besetting many of its citizens. He declared himself the Emperor of the United States of America and commanded that representatives join him in the Great Hall in San Francisco to ameliorate the many problems plaguing the land. And he signed it simply, Norton I, Emperor of the United States of America. And this is all true. For Norton wandered San Francisco from that day wearing an old military uniform. He demanded that people address him as Your Majesty, not as Mr. Norton. He actually managed to dine at many of the finer establishments despite having no money and no place to live, because a good businessman knows the benefit of having an emperor dine in your hall. He continued to issue proclamations to the various newspapers, one of which commanded a bridge to be built between San Francisco over the bay to the city of Oakland, a command that was not met until 1936 with the opening of the Golden Gate Bridge. He also demanded the immediate dissolution of Congress and ordered the military to do so. Of course, they ignored him. But nonetheless, he eked out an existence. And on one day, in September of 1864, the first challenger, Delirium, came to him. He was eating lunch with a friend, Samuel, and Delirium observed him doing so. The two men were talking, and Norton said, "People laugh at me, Sam." And Sam asks, "Doesn't that upset you? Don't you mind?" Norton shook his head. "Why would I mind? Let them laugh. I'm still their emperor." and Delirium puzzled over this creature. She did not understand him. "He should be mine," he said. "He should be mad, but he is sane, except for being the emperor. And even that, I am not so sure." And she turned to her brother, Dream, and said, His madness keeps him sane." And Dream looked at her and spoke, "And do you think him the only one, dear sister?" And thus the first challenge was met. It came to pass, and this is true, that Norton was arrested shortly thereafter by a young constable in the San Francisco Police Department and charged with lunacy. There was a massive outcry from the citizens of San Francisco. Scathing editorials were written about the shabby treatment of the emperor. The chief of police, being a relatively intelligent man, ordered Joshua Norton to be released immediately and issued a simple statement. "Mr. Norton has shed no blood, robbed no one, despoiled no country, which is far more than can be said of most in the king line." And from that day forward, the members of the San Francisco Police Department had standing orders to salute whenever in the presence of their emperor. And thus the city of San Francisco embraced Norton. And they shrugged their shoulders and collectively said, "He wants to be emperor? Let him have his fun. We don't mind." And Norton continued, writing his own currency and trading it for federal money, continuing to issue his proclamations, some of which were genuinely far-reaching, including commanding the United States government to take the lead in forming a League of Nations, something which would not come to pass until after the First World War, and which the United States would not join until the formation of the United Nations after World War II. And thus, the next challenger came, Desire. And she looked at Norton and came and peered to him and said, "I will give you your heart's desire. I will give you a queen and a castle. I will make you emperor for truth." And Norton looked at Desire. "And what is it I have to gain from this? What is it you want?" "You have to want these things. You have to desire them. You must take them." But Norton shook his head. "I am the Emperor of the United States of America. I am content to be what I am. What more than that could any man desire?" And thus Desire was thwarted and demanded of the Zine King, "What did you do? How did you do this?" And Dream looked at his sister and said, "He has his dignity. He is, after all, an emperor." And thus the final challenger was lost. On January 8th, 1880, on a rainy, windswept day, Joshua Norton was making his way to the Hastings Club to speak before a symposium when a great weight struck his chest and he collapsed into the street and fell into the gutter. A young police officer in the distance saw his emperor collapse and rushed to his side, but he was too late. Norton had passed on. And Despair looked down on the one she once claimed and simply said, "You never came back to me. I do not understand." And Dream looked at Despair and said, "He was the emperor. Take this lesson well." And finally, Norton's spirit rose and was met by Death. And Death looked upon Norton and smiled and stated, "I have met kings and emperors and heads of state in my time, Joshua. I have met them all. And you know something? I think you were my favorite." That part of the story I just like to think is true. Madam Toastmaster.